Behaving like royalty. King William I. You need a defining moment, an event in your life that will affect everything from that point onwards. I am referring to an event that will totally change your life. You need a supernatural breakthrough, and the good news is that this is God's desire for your life too. In 2 Samuel 2 verse 20, David refers to God as Baal Perazim, which means master of breakthroughs. If God was the master of breakthroughs for King David, you have every right to expect him to be the same for you. But, like everything in the Christian life, something being God's desire for you doesn't mean that it will automatically happen. Your part is to take hold of this, believe it, and be expectant for the breakthrough, and then it will happen. Or to use biblical terminology, it will come to pass. Take this devotional as God's message to you personally, and receive it with faith and with expectancy. In order to illustrate the kind of pivotal moment I'm talking about, allow me to give you a lesson in English history. As you may guess from the title of this devotional, the lesson is about King William I of England, otherwise known as William the Conqueror. Our story begins nearly 1,000 years ago on the 5th of January, 1066. Edward the Confessor, King of England, has died. Edward had apparently, in 1064, having no heirs, promised the throne to his first cousin once removed, William, Duke of Normandy. Harold Godwinson, a powerful English nobleman, had sworn to support William in regard to this. However, now that King Edward has died, Harold has claimed the throne for himself and become King Harold II of England. So how did Harold, who unlike William was not a blood relative to King Edward, manage to be crowned as King Harold II? Well, Harold's claim to the throne was actually extremely tenuous. Harold's sister was Edward's wife, which wasn't really much of a claim, but Harold's trump card was something else. Harold had been with King Edward when he died, and claimed that on his deathbed, King Edward changed his mind about his promise to William, and instead gave the throne to Harold. No one else was present to confirm or deny this, and for whatever reason, the people were convinced. There was someone who was not convinced, though: William, Duke of Normandy. Despite Harold being crowned, William believed that he was the rightful King of England. He believed that it was God's will for him to become king, and he wasn't going to give up. There's a lesson we can learn here. Just because something is God's will for your life does not mean that it will be easy. There may be times when it seems impossible for that thing to happen. Since 1064, William has lived with an expectation of becoming King of England one day. But now someone else had been crowned instead of him, and it looked as though William's dreams had come to nothing. It is at times like this that we need to decide if we're going to give up, or if we are going to hold on tightly to what we believe God has promised us. Hebrews 10:35-36 in the Message translation encourages us. So don't throw it all away now. You were sure of yourselves then, it's still a sure thing, but you need to stick it out, staying with God's plan so you'll be there for the promised completion. William made the decision to stick it out. He also had the backing of the established church of the time, which was the Catholic Church. And so it was that on the 13th of October, 1066, Duke William's Norman army prepared to face King Harold's Anglo-Saxon army in what became known as the Battle of Hastings. The two sides spent the night before the battle in very different ways. The Anglo-Saxons spent it drinking and singing. Not exactly the best preparation for a battle. Whereas the Normans prayed. William and the Normans may not have been perfect, but by involving God in the upcoming battle, they gave themselves a huge advantage over the Anglo-Saxons who gave God no place. The next day, the 14th of October, 1066, is the most important date in English history. On that day, a battle took place which lasted for most of the day, due to the fact that the opposing armies were fairly evenly matched. Effective defensive walls were created by the Anglo-Saxons using their shields, which the Normans were unable to break through. The Normans eventually gained the upper hand when they made a fake retreat. This led some of the Anglo-Saxons to break rank and chase the Normans, thinking they had them on the run. This in turn allowed other Norman soldiers to attack the weak points left in the shield wall. The Normans had their breakthrough. Final victory came when the stray arrow struck King Harold in the eye, killing him. Although history does not tend to record God's involvement in events, from a Christian perspective, the fact that the Normans prayed was almost certainly decisive. 2 months later, on Christmas Day, 1066, William was crowned King William I of England. King William was a God-fearing man, and this is reflected in his decision to have an abbey built on the site of the battle as an act of penance for the blood that was shed. The abbey was called Battle Abbey. King William also insisted that the high altar of the church should mark the spot where King Harold had fallen, an honour which he certainly did not need to give to the man who had taken his throne. So why am I giving you this lesson in English history? Well, partly because of what we can learn from King William I, which is, in addition to what we've already looked at, that the power of prayer should never be underestimated, and that we should involve God in everything we do and carry with us a reverent, God-fearing attitude. But there is also another reason for looking at the events surrounding the 14th of October 1066 at a field in southeast England. This reason is the pivotal event that occurred on the 14th of October 1066. The event that occurred that day produced William's breakthrough, and it is an example of the sort of pivotal event that will produce your breakthrough too. What I am talking about here is a moment or a short period of time that changes everything. The Battle of Hastings has had a profound effect on England, Britain, and arguably the world, the 955 plus years since then, depending on the current year. Let me give you a few examples of why this battle was the defining moment in English history. There have, of course, been many events that have shaped English and subsequently British history throughout the years, but none have been as game-changing as what happened on the 14th of October 1066, following a night of prayer. Without that day, and most likely without those prayers, the English and later the British monarchy would have been totally different. There would have been no King Richard the Lionheart, no King Henry VIII, no Queen Elizabeth I, no King James I, and no Queen Victoria. Our longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, would never have been, and neither would our current king, Charles III. What difference would this have made, though? Well, without those monarchs, many of the events that took place during their reigns would likely never have happened. For example, without Henry VIII, there would be no Church of England. In fact, all denominations that originated in England were a consequence of Henry VIII's break from the Catholic Church. Without King James I, there would be no King James Bible. Without the dynasty that was established by William I, there would have been no Magna Carta. which was an agreement originating from 1215 that later became the basis for the American Constitution. So as you can see, the long-term effects of the Battle of Hastings reach even beyond the shores of England and the United Kingdom. It is impossible to imagine what England would look like today if William had not claimed his right to the throne. If he had just given up and said, well, Harold's king now, so I guess that's it. One thing is certain, everything about England would be totally different, including the population. Many, if not most, of today's English people have Norman ancestry, whether they know it or not, so the population itself would be massively different, and many of the famous figures from the past, such as William Shakespeare, would not have even been born. Even the English language itself, which today is spoken around the world, is a product of a lot of intermingling with French words. Poor, letter, age, and pork are all words with Norman French origins. 955 plus years later, England and the English language reflect the fact that William chose to stick with it and not quit. The difference that the 14th of October 1066 made to English history is almost beyond comprehension, and could certainly never have been imagined by those Norman soldiers as they prayed before the battle. This is exactly the sort of change that God will bring to your life, if you will believe Him for it and expect it to happen, no matter how impossible it might seem. Remember, God is the God of the impossible. Jesus said in Luke 18:27, "The things which are impossible with men are possible with God." William received his breakthrough, and it changed everything. It's time to believe God for your breakthrough, and stick with it until it comes to pass. We hope that you've enjoyed this devotional and that you've been blessed. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.